most important part of a person's childhood is learning what's right and what's wrong. The experiences and the spaces that we inhabit help to define our perception of these concepts. But what happens when you can't tell the difference? This is the premise of A Bronx Tale, the 1993 film directed by Robert De Niro. A Bronx Tale is an adaptation of the screenplay written by Chaz Palminteri, who was inspired by his early days living in the Belmont community of the Bronx. In this film, a young Calogero, or C, is heavily influenced by two figures: his hardworking, virtuous father, Lorenzo, played by De Niro, and Sonny, a violent and flashy gangster who is revered by the community, played by Palminteri. Sonny is the local mob boss, and he takes a liking to C after the young boy refuses to implicate him in the murder he just committed. Sonny tries to repay the kid by offering his father a lucrative job opportunity, but Lorenzo turns it down, wanting to stay out of the gangster life. Sonny then turns his attention towards courting C, with high-paying job opportunities and flashy items. The film documents the internal struggle that Calogero faces between a life of virtue like his father or a life of wealth like his new mentor. He's unable to understand why his father's life would be so appealing or why he should be so wary of Sonny's lifestyle. This clouding of good and bad is a characterization trope that has been present in Italian-American cinema since the turn of the century. In this video essay, we'll explore the history of the good-bad trope, how it developed in the 20th century, and the impact it has had on this film. When Italian Americans were first being depicted in American film, it was the early 1900s, and hordes of immigrants were streaming into the United States from Europe. Many of these immigrants lived in dirty, overcrowded slums in major Northeast cities. There was also the impact of American racial inequality, particularly with immigrants coming from Italy. The darker skin of Sicilians and other southern Italians led to worse treatment than their fairer-skinned counterparts from the north. As films began to introduce Italians, they made clear distinctions between who was viewed as good and who was viewed as bad. The 1906 film The Black Hand is the earliest known movie in the mafia genre. This is a 10-minute black and white film that describes recent events that have occurred in the quarters of New York City. The gangsters in the movie have poor English, are bumbling drunks, and kidnap the daughter of a local merchant. The costumes and the appearance of the gangsters are meant to indicate that they are of Sicilian descent. The shopkeeper who is extorted is also an Italian immigrant, but he is depicted as a hard-working and polite family man who contributes to the community. The film provokes a sense of sympathy for decent, hardworking people, as well as the police, and also creates a fear around Italian immigrants who may secretly be part of this mafia. The early gangster films continue to build on this gap between the good and evil. The 1912 film The Musketeers of Pig Alley builds on similar stereotypes. However, in this 18-minute film, we begin to see the development of the gangster as a more rounded character. The main character is a gangster named Snapper Kid, who runs a gang in Pig Alley. Snapper Kid gains sympathy from the audience when he saves the little lady from being drugged by another gangster. He also is able to avoid police containment at the end of the film when the little lady lies on his behalf. This film shows the development from its predecessor. While the gangster still meets a downfall and is portrayed as an evil character, he is also portrayed as a man with morals and receives a small victory at the end when he escapes police custody. The mafia genre would be forever changed in the spring of 1972, when Francis Ford Coppola released the first film in the Godfather trilogy. Coppola's movie abandons the notion that members of the mafia are inherently evil and should be presented in a villainous light. Instead, he romanticizes them, emphasizing the elegant lifestyle and importance of family. Family Don, Vito Corleone, is presented as much more of a businessman than a criminal, and his opposition to drug trafficking and compassion for family make him a character revered by viewers. The cloudiness of good and bad is also portrayed in the character of his son Michael. Michael begins the first film as an honest all-American man, but his evil descent to Don is justified due to the ideas of family and revenge. We see the events that unfold in front of him that lead him down the mafia path as he slowly realizes the difficulty of being a virtuous man in a world of gangsters. In the second film, we see his development depicted alongside his father's, as he goes from Italian immigrant to the role of Don by avenging the death of his parents. By allowing the viewer to see the timeline that leads one to the mafia life, it creates more pity for that character and thus alters the way that he is perceived. Showing the events that lead a man to a life of crime is helpful, but that doesn't necessarily apply to A Bronx Tale. The first time we see mob head Sonny is in this confrontation over a parking spot. Calogero is sitting alone outside his apartment, having been ordered by his father to remain on the stoop. C watches as Sonny proceeds to kill the man over this dispute. The police come to his apartment after discovering that the boy had witnessed the event.
Look at this guy.
When the police show C the suspects and ask him who committed the murder, he refuses to tell them that Sonny pulled the trigger. Sonny goes free, and he doesn't forget the kid's actions. A few days later, Lorenzo is approached by a mafia assistant while working his bus route. He is offered a lucrative job opportunity, but turns it down, as he would rather remain outside the mafia lifestyle than make extra money. Since he can't express gratitude through his father, Sonny begins to turn his attention towards the boy. He introduces him to the other mafia members and allows him to earn tips at the dice games. One day, Lorenzo discovers that C has been making an impressive amount of money and confronts Sonny, telling him to stay away from his son. The movie then goes on to portray Calogero as a 17-year-old boy who has maintained a relationship with the mob leader without his father's knowledge. At this point, C is engaging in low-level mafia work, but his father discovers his ongoing relationship with Sonny and confronts his son. This is where we see a heated confrontation between Lorenzo and C, where C expresses his disinterest in his father's path for his life and attacks his character. After emotional meetings with both his father and Sonny, C plans on going with his group of friends to get revenge on the local African Americans by throwing a Molotov cocktail through the store window. But Sonny pulls Calogero out of the car. The boys' plan goes on to fail, and then they are killed when the cocktail is thrown back and explodes in their own car. Overwhelmed, Calogero rushes to thank Sonny for saving his life, but instead he witnesses as the mob boss is murdered at a function. Sonny's death is a reminder to us that there is still accountability for good and bad acts. However, his character is still redeemed in death. The viewer gains respect for Sonny once they realize that he saved Calogero's life by pulling him out of the car, and truly feels like he cared about the kid. His actions in life are further redeemed when Lorenzo appears in his wake. He tells his son that he never hated Sonny, and he pays his respects. By having Lorenzo do so, the director is helping to validate the actions of Sonny as right.
I never hated you. I guess it's that I was just mad at you because you made him grow up so fast. May God have mercy on your soul.
Sonny's death at the end of the film is one way that the good-bad trope is still accounted for in modern mafia films. Throughout the film, the lifestyle of Sonny has been presented as more appealing than that of Lorenzo, which explains why he is able to maintain such influence over the young Calogero. However, Sonny's eventual downfall is reflective of an earlier conversation that he has with C. The boss is discussing with the kid whether you should want to be feared or you should want to be loved.
Is it better to be loved or feared?
That's a good question. It's nice to be both, but it's very difficult. But if I had my choice, I would rather be feared. Fear lasts longer than love. Friendships that are bought with money mean nothing.
Sonny told C that he would rather be feared than loved, since fear lasts longer than love and keeps people more loyal. However, throughout this film, we can see how Sonny's perception of fear and love is wrong. Sonny is representative of a man who is feared. At the beginning of the film, he is able to get away with murder in broad daylight because the community is fearful of implicating him. He instills fear in Lorenzo by exposing his son to the criminal underworld and involving him financially. Lorenzo represents a man who is loved. De Niro's character is a virtuous man living in a community of fear, and he represents the person who wants to do the right thing. He is willing to sacrifice personal gain if it will give his son a better opportunity in life. He is proud of what he has and is comfortable with his lifestyle, which is evident when he denies front row seats at the boxing match. And it's Calogero who is confronted with an evolved form of the good-bad trope, which is fear versus love. In the end, we see that the good trope wins out. Sonny's theory is proven wrong, as fear leads to his downfall. He believes that fear can outlast love, but his death comes out of fear of power, and those supposedly loyal to him are unable to help. Calogero learns through this tragic message that the love professed by his father is a better path than fear, and in the end, Lorenzo continues to profess love towards Sonny. So we have established a timeline of Italian-American immigration that establishes when they were first depicted in films. Along with this, we saw the first depictions of stereotypes and characterizations. We saw how a particular characterization slowly began to develop and later went through a significant transformation. After this, we turned our attention to the main film, A Bronx Tale, discussing the content of the film while highlighting the events that invoke this trope. We then saw how this trope was evident within the three main characters, Sonny, Lorenzo, and Calogero. We can conclude that the good-bad characterization is still present in modern gangster films, but is presented within a modern context. Because the good-bad difference is reflected in the modern world, the films of this era continue to reflect that. These films tell us that while the difference between good and bad, and fear and love, may be difficult to see, they are important to our paths in life and the people that we strive to become.